Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 8, episode entitled Meridian. It aired November 14th, 1994.
This is another one of those episodes. I remember the original airing.
Really?
Yeah.
You remember this episode?
Yeah. I know, shocking, isn't it?
I barely remember it from yesterday. No, just kidding. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about the previous episode, Civil Defense?
No, it was perfect.
Yeah, it was perfect. More episodes like that, please. That could have come from any Star Trek, but it could have come from TNG, could have come from Enterprise, could have come from...
From anywhere.
Discovery, could have come from anywhere.
Oh yeah, it was a very Star Trek episode.
Yes, it was. Should we get started?
Absolutely, I am ready.
In the cold open, Kira is getting a coffee at the Replomat when Odo joins her. They have this discussion about why she orders coffee too hot to drink, and she's trying to explain the joy of the coffee being just a little too hot at first, which is something I can relate to.
Yeah, that seems fair.
And then it eases into the right temperature and then you gulp it down.
Oh, absolutely.
But if it starts there, it's all wrong. And that's what she's trying to explain to Odo. And he's like, I don't get it. And then they have this whole discussion about how he doesn't really understand eating and the joys of eating. And
okay, this is another piece where I'm going to call out the whole changeling thing of transforming into something makes you experience that thing. Well, if you can't do taste buds, you don't really know what it feels like to eat something or be hungry or to enjoy food.
Just because you look like a human doesn't mean you understand humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or an Arcturian
Or
vulture or
humanoids.
whatever it was he transformed into.
Yeah.
We see that the founders basically cosplay, pretending to be these animals, saying that, oh, they understand these things. No. They are so pretentious.
Yeah.
I have come to the conclusion that the changelings are actually the hipsters of the Gamma Quadrant.
Because they think they understand everybody else's struggle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, an alien named Tehran approaches and starts being overly familiar with Kira, saying how sad he was that she left Quarks early the night before. Odo thinks he should leave so they can chat, but Kira then uses him as a defense mechanism, saying that they're lovers.
Odo is so wonderfully confused by this.
Well, this is a tried and true method that women often have to employ to protect themselves from unwanted advances, but I do think it's cruel to do it without warning to someone as emotionally confused as Odo.
I like, though, the way he very quickly picks up on what's going on and just goes along with it.
He figures it out. It's not that it was the wrong thing to do, because I do think women need to do that quite frequently, and you need somebody you can trust to do that with. But I do think she should have let him know why she did it afterwards, and that she might do it again. But anyway, the guy eventually takes the hint and leaves, and Kira is relieved. She has to head to Ops, and she doesn't even drink her coffee at the right temperature. She just leaves it there. This is the kind of thing that always bothers me, when they order something and then they never even touch it.
Yeah,
like,
at least with Cisco, it's usually some kind of major emergency when he's just trying to eat his dessert.
Yeah, she was always going to Ops. She should have taken it with her or something. Oh, it's a waste of coffee.
There's no food on Ops.
It's in the manual.
There's a manual?
So Tehran is played by Jeffrey Combs, who is a very popular Star Trek actor on Twitter anyway.
Yeah.
He has this naturally kind of smarmy delivery. I find it really off-putting. I don't quite understand the appeal.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the point. But I know he plays a bunch of different characters in the Star Trek universe, but I believe this is the first.
Oh.
Yeah, I read that he had auditioned for the role of Riker and didn't get it. He would have been a very interesting Riker, very unappealing.
Yes. That would have been a significantly different character.
Definitely. Which is interesting because this episode, directed by Jonathan Frakes.
Oh, funny.
Well, now we go to the Defiant, and Cisco is recording a log that he's convinced Starfleet that exploration of the Gamma Quadrant must continue despite the threat of the Dominion. And then we go to the bridge, and they're all chatting about this sector and how nice it is that there's no Jem'Hadar activity here. Yeah, I bet.
I have some notes about this in the analysis.
Okay. Well, then Dax picks up unusual gravimetric distortions in a nearby system, and they decide to move in closer and find that there are no planets in the system, so they're not sure where the distortions are coming from. But then they're hit with something that causes the ship to shake, and on the screen we see a planet seem to magically appear in front of them.
Oh yeah, the planet just materializes on the view screen. This felt so much like a TNG episode. I actually had to check to see whether I wasn't watching the next gen.
Well, at first I was like, are we supposed to believe that planet just formed? Which seemed not right, since you could see bodies of water and areas of land. I'm like, it can't just form like that. But anyway, that's not what happened. Well, we come back from the ad, and they're trying to figure out where the planet came from, discussing whether or not it was cloaked. But Miles says no, it wasn't cloaked. And then they're scanned, and they detect a settlement of about 30 humanoid inhabitants, the only people on the entire planet. And then a very friendly woman who calls herself Selton Rakal calls them, and she says she's from Meridian, which is the planet's name. She explains that her planet is from another dimension that intersects with this one. She's very friendly, and she invites them to dinner. Sisko agrees, but asks if the planet might disappear during dessert. She says not to worry. I would worry.
She was very friendly.
She was very friendly.
Clearly, she was not from the Shadow universe.
No.
She was from a much friendlier dimension.
A happy dimension. Well, now we go down to the planet to a large building in the middle of a hilly woodland, surrounded by just green trees everywhere. So now we're in an open area, all sitting on the ground around low tables, and the woman from before, Selton Rakal, is saying that it's good to be together again after so long, and everyone seems quite happy. The guy sitting next to Dax is admiring her trill markings, asking how far down they go. Very familiar. She says all the way, which intrigues him and makes Miles kind of smirk.
He is fairly polite because he does ask if her markings were just decorative.
Right.
But it is kind of an odd question of how far down the markings go. A little forward.
Yeah, it's a little familiar, which is the theme of this guy in this episode. Rakal is telling Sisko that their planet has a dual existence, shifting between dimensions. They don't know what causes the shifts. The guy flirting with Dax is named Daral, and he says he thinks the shifts are caused by fluctuations in the Meridian's quantum matrix, but they aren't really sure. In the other dimension, they don't have form. They exist as pure consciousness. Even the planet has no form. When they return to this dimension, everything is exactly as it was before, and nothing has aged. Daral then continues to flirt with Dax, digging the goop out of some fruit and feeding it to her. He tells her it's been 60 years since they were last in this form. I don't know, this seems like a lot of risk to be sitting here. I mean, the humans don't know that they would even survive a shift. We're never cautious enough. It's like we should have asked a few more questions before we just beamed down to this planet, but here we are.
I know I've brought this up before, but how do you know if localized fruit or food is not actually poisonous to humans?
Yeah. I never used to think about that kind of stuff on Star Trek, but now I find it something I think about all the time. It's like, that might give you a virus.
Right. This might be poisonous to Trill.
Yeah. I guess you have to be able to let go of that to watch the show.
And I do like where Miles's head is. Oh, it's a long time between meals.
Yeah. He was like a hobbit in this scene. He didn't have a lot of lines in this episode overall. He just had a couple of lines here and there. Yeah. Well, Daral is played by Brett Cullen, who was in MASH, The Thornbirds, Falcon Crest before this show, this episode.
Yep.
And that where I remember him from is Falcon Crest. But he has over 140 IMDb credits, and he's also been in some recent stuff like Blacklist and even the movie Joker.
Oh.
Then we go back to the station, and Tehran is complaining to Quark that his holosuite program was boring, 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 boring. And Quark is like, no refunds. Very Quark.
I have named him Creepo the Alien.
He is so creepy. He offers him access to another program for free, but Tehran wants a custom program, and he pulls out some money, saying he wants Major Kira. Quark can't pass up the money, even though he knows it'll be tough to get Kira into the holosuite to be scanned. I was very upset here, as you maybe would have guessed.
Yes.
Let me just read you what I wrote, okay?
Okay, this will be good.
This should be 100% illegal, and if Quark gets away with another disgusting thing, I am not watching the show anymore, and I'm not even kidding. That's what I typed in.
That sounds about right.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't get away with it, so... Because that might have been the end of the podcast. So I just thought I'd let you know that we're going to do the next episode. I was so horrified.
I'm now worried about the Moogie episode.
Right out of the gate. Well, Tehran takes his money back and he says payment will be on delivery. Absolutely grotesque. Back to Meridian, and Dax and Daral are walking and chatting. He says his people are the descendants of an expedition that was stranded on the planet a millennia ago. He says their numbers haven't grown because they can only reproduce during the time they have physical form, and that time keeps getting shorter and shorter. This time they only have 12 days before Meridian will shift back, and then they'll be there for 60 years. Eventually, the time will be so short that Meridian will be unable to shift back, and everything will cease to exist.
That sounds rather dark.
How does he know that? How do any of them know that? Like, was there a pamphlet? I mean, come on.
Well, they seem technically quite advanced to have a lot of understanding about this, and Dural is a scientist, so it looks like they figured it out, or they understand it.
Which is funny because they don't seem to have any computers.
That we saw.
Yeah, where are the computers?
Maybe they're super intelligent and they can do all the calculations and things in their head. They don't need computers. They're too slow.
That could be.
I do question, though, they know that their existence is going to end and eventually the planet will basically cease to exist. Why wouldn't you be trying to get off the planet?
That's my number one question in this whole episode.
Yeah, there's only 30 of them. They could probably all fit on the Defiant. It's like, if you stay, you'll probably die.
It's why so much of this episode doesn't make sense, because of that exact thing that you said.
Right.
Well, Sisko is telling Rakal that if they could help stabilize the dimensional shifts, they will. Dax tells Sisko that she's going to beam up to the Defiant with Dural to run some scans on Meridian's sun.
And we see a little bit of... Sisko really does like kids, doesn't he?
Oh, yes, he does. He hugs a little kid.
He is very much the family man.
Yeah, he's so happy to see kids. Except for Nog.
Entirely different.
Which he's never been happy to see one time. Well, I don't want to talk about this gross story back on the station, but here we go. Kira comes into Quark's saying she got a message that Morn wanted to see her. But it's all a ruse for Quark to announce that Kira is Quark's 1 millionth customer. She's won some champagne, 5 free spins on the Dabo wheel, and a free hour in the holosuite with the program of her choice. She immediately tries to give away the holosuite visit to someone whose birthday it is because she doesn't want to go in the holosuite and she thinks somebody would like it. That's pretty funny.
Yes.
And then she takes the champagne and leaves. So far this plan has not worked.
A complete fail from Quark. She got free champagne, 5 spins at the Dabo table, and when she leaves, she seems to be heading towards the Dabo table, so he could lose even more.
Yep.
And she genuinely seemed quite happy that she'd got a present for somebody who, it was their birthday, wasn't it?
Yes.
So,
And
yeah.
Ensign somebody's birthday, yeah.
Yeah, Quark completely failed.
Yes, as usual. Back on the Defiant, Dural is there working with everyone on the mystery of the shift. This is when I thought, well, if they can just beam off of there, why don't they all just get out of there?
I have comments on this too.
Okay. They've detected an anomaly in the sun's fusion cycle. Sure. And a bunch of other sciencey stuff. They send a probe in to scan while Dural is too close to Dax flirting with her.
That was the most important thing in this scene. There was the kind of sciencey bit, but the important bit was Dax and Dural being very flirty.
Yes.
I'm sure everybody else on the bridge was going, oh, God.
Yeah, especially Miles. He was smirking.
Give it a rest, people.
I'd be worried that launching a probe into the sun might accelerate the shift or cause something that they weren't prepared for. But, oh no, we just send the probe in, see what happens.
That's true. It could have unforeseen consequences. And they are quite good at that.
Yeah, because they never talk about the risks.
Yeah. Remember when they were going to collapse the subspace anomaly, which would potentially destroy the entire system?
Yeah. And if wishes were horses.
Yeah, because it was going to work this time.
Yeah, it didn't work last time, but it'll be fine this time. Dax and Dural go back down to the planet, and they're walking together. And he says everyone has been waiting for him to find a new companion ever since his wife died, but he hasn't found the right woman, at least not until she fell from the sky. The rest of the scene is very cheesy as they climb a tree.
Oh, yeah.
But Jedsy's afraid of heights, and they sit on the grass together, and they start making out. I mean, it's a little silly, but you have to move fast in 46 minutes if you're trying to create, like, this great love story.
Yeah.
It was almost a little bit like the Star Wars prequels. Like, it was so forced and so fast.
Oh, yes. Yes, very much so.
The dialogue wasn't quite as bad, but...
They did not have the leather bondage outfit, though, so...
No, she stayed in her uniform. Now Dax and Dural are going over some data. They're still down on the planet. There's nothing to indicate that the gamma bursts of the sun are causing the quantum fluctuations. Sisko calls to say they've got some more data, and they're sending it to Dax. And then Sisko says if she's had enough fresh air and sunshine, she's welcome to come back to the ship, which was cute. They're picking on her. Miles has a little smirk again.
Yeah.
I'd be quite mortified by this if I were Dax, at the total lack of privacy. I would not live this out in the open.
But that's very you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Dax tells Dural they can work for a few more hours, then go to his room and count each other's spots. Thanks.
Oh, that was kind of cute.
Then when looking at the data, Dax discovers that the fusion reactants in the core of the sun are out of balance. Science technobabble. If they can stabilize this reaction, they might be able to keep Meridian in this dimension longer. They're very excited as Dax rushes off to the Defiant.
So things are looking up.
Apparently so. Back on the station, Quark is now trying to scan Kira from a distance, but Odo... God.
Quark is 9.5 out of 10 in the unsubtle department.
Yeah. And Odo keeps getting in the way by accident, and then he sees what's going on, and they realize what Quark is trying to do, and they rush over to him, grabbing the imager from his hand.
Yeah.
And eventually he admits that he's trying to get a hollow image of her to create a simulation of Ops, so others can, experience being in Ops. He should have come up with a better lie. That is really bad.
Odo does some of the loudest harumphs I've ever heard him do. He normally scoffs, but these are loud harumph.
Yes. Especially when he asks if this simulation of Ops is going to be naked.
Oh, yes.
And then Quark tries to get rid of Odo, asking if there's a petty thief he can harass, and Odo says, no, just you.
Yeah.
And Kira says if anyone wants to be an Ops, they can apply to the Bajoran Military Academy and then be an Ops with their clothes on, which that was when you asked me what I was laughing at. That's what I laughed at.
Oh, yeah.
She threatens him and throws the camera away.
Oh, that's a piece of just classic comedy. She tosses the camera over her shoulder, and then there's a pause, and you hear a crunch as it
Plunk.
lands somewhere in the background.
Yes.
Thud.
Back to the planet, and Dax and the dude are making out again. Dax says she has good news, and their plan is going to work. And then I thought, if only this guy knew how terrible the Deep Space Nine plans were, he would not be so excited.
Oh, that's wicked. It is funny, though.
It's true, though.
Yeah.
Well, then he starts talking about building a house big enough for two, but she says it's going to take too long to stabilize this science thing that they're doing, and they won't see each other again for 60 years. But he says he can just go back to the Alpha Quadrant with her.
I thought that was fascinating that he was prepared to leave the planet and go back with her.
Well, he says later that she wouldn't survive the shift. So he, at this point, knows that that's not an option for her to stay. So if he wants to be with her, he will have to go with her.
Yes, that's true.
Yep.
At this point, he had no other option if he wanted to stay with Dax.
Exactly. Back in the town square, the lead woman is all excited by this great news. The next time they return, they'll have 30 years in corporeal form before shifting. Dural says he needs to tell her something, but she's like, oh, sure. But now we have a future Dural. You've got to make some decisions, meaning he needs to pick a girlfriend. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, you need to talk to Kashara, she says. So I take it she is very pushy, and she's also the village's matchmaker.
Yeah. A little Elixis going on there.
Oh.
But at the same time, if your numbers have dwindled so much, you're down to 30 people, and you've all got to be agreeing that it's important for you to find ways to procreate, or you're not going to survive. Although, here's an option, leave the planet. But anyway, we clearly don't want to do that. So if that's not an option, that's probably a huge part of what she does. If she's the leader, it's probably their number one thing, survival.
Yes.
So I don't blame her.
Well, that's because you admired Elixis.
I wouldn't say admired.
Idolized?
She had some skills. Idolized? No.
I just admire Elixis for her clarity of vision.
It's not the same as this. That was all for her selfish reasons, where
Yes.
I think this is about survival.
Yeah, Sultan seems like a much nicer person.
Right. Well, she runs off before Dural can tell her that he's planning to leave. Back on the Defiant, Julian is telling Dax that Quark will be heartbroken that she's found a new boyfriend, and he jokes that he won't let her win at Tongo anymore. Jadzia's like, I'm very good at Tongo. She does not like this insult.
I am pretty sure Julian is just picking on Dax at this point.
Yeah, he's got like an evil grin on his face.
If you said before how the writers appeared to be changing the relationship between the two, of making him more like a brother or more like family, they're making him a much better character. And they're making this relationship between him and Dax, it's like the younger brother who would pick on a sister with that kind of gag.
Well, yeah, because season 1 Bashir would have been just mooning over her and professing his love for her and not caring at all about what she wanted.
Right.
And this version isn't like that.
Yeah, I like it. This is the Bashir that is someone you can root for.
Yeah, he's more like a normal person.
Yeah.
Well, Dural comes in and says it's done. He's told everyone he's leaving. Even though everyone else feels like they can't afford to lose people in the settlement, he's made up his mind. And then he says he has to go back and say goodbye to some other people. I thought he said he already told everyone, but apparently not. He has to go back and say goodbye.
I think this is the bit where you find out that his wife isn't really dead, and he has to go back and tell his wife he's leaving.
No, that didn't happen. That'd be terrible if that were true.
Oh, I think that's what's really happening. I'm going straight to the dark place.
There's only 30 people. It's very hard to keep secrets when there's only 30 people. Back to Quarks, and Tehran is harassing Quark, saying he only has 2 days on the station. Quark says he's obtained some high-level decryption protocol to get the info he needs for his program. Tehran slinks away, and Quark plugs his new spark plug into the computer behind the bar.
Yes.
In the security office, Odo tells Kira that Quark has been illegally accessing her personnel files, so he got away with it for about 5 seconds while we were on a commercial break. And he says that this info that's been downloaded includes her voice print and retinal scan, and even her psychiatric profile.
They keep a lot of stuff in their computers.
Apparently. He asks if he should arrest Quark or if she wants to do it herself, but she has a better idea, and she tells him she'd like to prepare a little surprise for Quark, and asks for Odo's help.
So it turns out either Quark is slipping, or Odo's figured out that he just needs to monitor the computers in Quark's bar.
Yeah, because in season 1, nobody was ever checking any logs. Maybe he put some alerts on the personnel files. Or it would probably make sense if he could see activity coming out of Quarks into high security areas. If that's what he were tracking, then he would catch a lot of stuff.
Well, we know he has been getting smarter at that because he installed the cameras, keeping an eye on Quarks.
That's true.
I'm also thinking that maybe Odo is figuring out that if he arranges for stuff to be slipped to Quark, Quark is dumb enough to actually use it. So that access code he got a hold of, Odo would actually arrange for it to be released to him.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good point. Back on Meridian, Dax is describing Tango to Dural, but he's not really listening. He's having second thoughts about leaving Meridian, but he really wants to be with her. He's worried that his people will die out, which, again, why don't they just all leave? Oy.
So he is worried about the future of his people.
Yes. She volunteers to stay on Meridian, but he says her molecular structure wouldn't survive the shift. Which, again, how do we know that? I don't know. She tells him some crazy idea about using the transporter buffer to match her quantum matrix to his, and she says she discussed it with Julian earlier.
Oh, would this fall under abuse of the transporter?
I don't know. This is kind of dumb, I hate to say. This whole scene was kind of dumb.
It was just an excuse for more kissy time with Dax.
I guess. Back on the Defiant, and Sisko drops by and finds Dax requesting a 60-year leave of absence from Starfleet. He's not happy about it, but he'll accept it if it's what she really wants. He's happy for her, but says, "I'm going to miss you, old man." It's very cute.
Yes.
She's looking forward to the chance to exist as pure consciousness. And then he says the next time they see each other, he'll be a great-grandfather, probably. And they say goodbye.
This was probably the best scene of the show, actually.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I think for the first time, you really saw how much these two liked each other.
Yeah.
How solid that friendship really was. Sisko was genuinely upset at losing his friend. And it wasn't like his friend was just, going to live on another planet. It's his friend would be basically out of touch for 60 years.
Right. He was essentially losing her for most of his life.
Yeah, exactly. We also discover that Curzon would fall in love at the drop of a hat. I'm picturing after Curzon had a couple of drinks, he'd be trying to marry the cocktail waitresses at the casino.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, a couple more shots at Curzon.
Yeah, can't pass him by.
No.
And here's my final point in this scene. She has, so far in this episode, brought up the 8 lifetimes twice.
Dural says it once.
Oh.
So he's already heard it how many times?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Now, if she spends a whole lifetime, effectively, in non-corporeal form, wow, she is going to be insufferable.
Yes.
After 8 lifetimes corporeal and 1 non-corporeal, fill in something here. They're all just going to be in ops rolling their eyes in 60 years' time.
Oh my God.
Here we go again.
Funny.
Non-corporeal bit.
Totally. Back to Quark's, and Quark is walking Tehran to his holosuite asking for payment. He says if the program is as good as he claims, he may purchase it for use at home in his personal holosuite. I mean, seriously, revolting.
Creepy the alien is going to the holosuites.
So now we go into the holosuite, and it's all red sheer curtains hanging everywhere, or a red light on white curtains, I guess, whatever. And he approaches what looks like Kira on a bed. We get a very seductive view of the legs and body, but we can't see the face until he gets close.
Somebody very scantily dressed.
Yes. And then when he gets close, the head comes up from behind a pillow, and it's Quark's head. And Quark says, I've been waiting for you. And Tehran freaks out and runs away. It would have been more interesting if he found himself attracted to Quark. Now we have a story.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, Tehran runs out to Quark saying, I will ruin you for this, Quark. Odo and Kira come in just as the guy stomps out.
The two of them, if you notice, the way they just sort of saunter in.
This story now at this point also makes no sense because did Quark not test it? Didn't even look at it? I mean, it's all very hand-wavy. It's just like a horrible little story in the side here.
I assume, because it's Quark, he probably put it together, tested it once and went, yeah, it's good. And then right before he ran it, that's when Odo and Kira put their modifications in.
I don't know. It's very strange.
And I back that up by saying right after Creepo the alien came out of the holosuite and start shouting at Quark, that's when Odo and Kira both sort of saunter in.
Yeah.
As if they had been monitoring what was going on. So that's why I think they managed to corrupt the code in that time.
Yeah, I think they could have done a lot of different things, including just using Odo in some way in the holosuite.
Yeah.
This was an interesting thing that they did, but I contend it made no sense. Back on the Defiant, and Bashir is scanning Jadzia after they've scrambled her molecules to do whatever they're going to do here to get her ready for the shift. She kisses Julian goodbye and asks Miles if he'll be done overhauling the station before she returns in 60 years, and he says he doubts it. Me too.
Yeah, not a chance. He's going to be working on it for the next 120 years.
Totally. So the shift is going to occur in 57 minutes, so she heads down to the planet. Before she goes, she says to tell Quark that she'll be back to collect the latinum he owes her with interest. I like that line. Now we're down on the planet, and the woman in charge welcomes her to the fold. She's still in uniform, which I thought was strange. Wouldn't she have changed out of her uniform? Anyway, off they go to prepare for the shift.
Doesn't necessarily matter. She'll be non-corporeal for 60 years.
Yeah, but remember the times when they have done things that they didn't want Starfleet to know about or to say they were still part of Starfleet. They always change into their civilian clothes. So I'm just surprised in this scenario that she kept on her civilian clothes with her communicator.
Oh, that's a
yeah,
good
which
point.
they needed to beam her up, apparently. Now up on the Defiant, they watch the shift start to happen. I would back up a bit farther. I feel like they're very close. Again, nobody's worried about anything. Everything's going to be fine.
Find a moon to hide behind.
As the shift starts to happen, down on the planet, everyone kind of phases in and out, except for Jadzia. And the planet kind of shakes.
Oh, yeah, like they're having an earthquake.
Right. And Dural says something is wrong. The planet starts experiencing intense seismic activity as everyone but Jadzia disappears. Up on the Defiant, they realize that Jadzia is acting as some kind of an anchor interfering with the shift. Miles actually says that Jadzia is destabilizing the Matrix.
Yep.
That was pretty funny. Jadzia starts to, I don't know, like suffocate or something. She like has her hands on her chest and she's dramatically leaning forward and then backwards.
I assume it's because the atmosphere is starting to disappear from the planet.
Okay. Well then,
That she's actually starting to choke.
it was just weird how she played it.
Yeah. The effects did look a little cheesy.
A little cheesy. Well, they beam her up and rescue her. And her boyfriend shifts away.
Yeah.
Now we go to Dax's quarters, and Sisko stops by, saying the shift went back to normal after they beamed her away. And then he says, Jadzia, I'm sorry. She says she just needs some time to herself. He leaves her alone, and she slides down to the floor, saying she just needs about 60 years. The end.
With a very sad-looking Dax.
Indeed.
Oh, feel bad for her.
Yep. All right, overanalysis. What have you got?
I think we can start off with a few things. I'm going to make an assumption here, which is the planet was going to disappear eventually, and they'd been unable to find out a way of stabilizing it. So they might have opted to evacuate had Dax not being able to figure out what was going wrong and them to basically stabilize the process. So although we can kind of pick on them of saying, why weren't you evacuating? They might have chosen that as an endpoint if they hadn't been able to fix it.
Yeah, I get that. I was thinking that there must be some real positive about the shift or the state of being pure consciousness that they didn't want to give up. That I kind of wish they'd explored that a little bit, talking about how great that was. But they didn't. They didn't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
If they had said that that was such a great thing that they couldn't give up, then I would have believed it. But instead, it was just like, I don't know, they just seemed resigned to it.
Well, and what's funny about that is they said about how they looked forward to corporeal form.
Right.
and experiencing physical pleasures. It's like, well, how good was non-corporeal then?
Yeah.
If your highlight of the next 60 years is scraping out some fruit and eating the skin of it.
And waiting to die off.
Yeah.
I guess it's a way of having an exceedingly long life.
Yeah.
So maybe they were viewing that as some way to
Oh.
have immortality.
Yeah.
But there was an end at some point when they couldn't shift back anymore.
Yeah, I could see that being a good reason to do it.
Yeah.
But if there's an end date on it, why wouldn't you be getting out?
Or planning to
Yeah.
get out. Like if they had said, hey, come back in 100 years because that will be our last shift and save us.
Yeah, and there's a good chance the Federation might do that.
But that's not what this was about. This whole thing was about this little cheeseball love story. It
Yeah, that would have been a different story, yes.
would have been a Star Trek story.
So the next point,
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that the Federation at this point, or at least Cisco, must have a fairly good idea of the extent of the Dominion borders or the areas that they exert influence over. Maybe this came from the Nagus or the Ferengi or the races that the Ferengi are doing business with. Otherwise, you'd be playing a really dangerous game of roulette of, is this area dominated by the Dominion or are we safe?
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. They must have some way of knowing which are the safer areas.
Yeah.
Or they've just decided that they don't care. And as long as they're not settling there because they know that the Bajoran settlement was destroyed.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe they're thinking if we don't settle here and we're just poking around, it'll be okay. And also, maybe since now they know who the founders are, they feel like they've made their point, which is not good because the founders were way more powerful.
Right. Maybe they're working on the principle that they can always run away. If they see or detect the Dominion, they'll just leave.
That does not seem like a good plan.
Run away. Run away.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, I thought that was very dangerous, but I guess it's part of their exploration thing. That's what they do.
Yep.
On to the next point.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go into the Gamma Quadrant, wouldn't it be a really good idea to bring Odo along?
Yeah, for protection.
Yeah, I mean...
Added protection. Yeah.
Exactly. The Jem'Hadar are programmed not to hurt Odo and to see him as almost godlike as he's one of the founders. So if you run into the Jem'Hadar, put him on screen and have him say, yeah, go away, we're busy.
Back off. Yeah.
Get lost. So I would think Odo would be a necessary to bring along.
Whatever happened to that other security guy that they brought over?
Eddington?
Yeah. I don't know. I kept thinking his name was Snodgrass in the last episode
Uh,
because I couldn't remember. What happened to him? He was in like one scene.
he makes a reappearance.
He does?
Yes.
Okay. Like on the station.
On the station. That is correct.
Because he's not in the security office. I mean, Odo still has his same office.
Well, because that's the Bajoran security office.
Oh, I see. Maybe he's in Ops and we didn't go to Ops.
Yeah.
Well, where was he in the last episode when they were all stuck somewhere? I guess he was locked in a turbolift somewhere or something.
Yeah, Mars has made him a special little office and they keep him in there.
Okay. What else you got?
Well, and I think my final point is, and we've already touched on this, Odo
Yeah.
appears to have upped security so he can keep a better eye on Quark. I am impressed with
Yeah.
this.
He does seem to have found better ways to keep an eye on Quark, yes.
Yeah.
But not too overt because he doesn't want Quark to know about it because
Right.
then he'll find other secret ways to do his deals.
Exactly. Which is why
Yeah.
I think he let Quark have those security codes, or he has some way of slipping them to Quark. And he's not smart enough to figure out that, hey, maybe this is a sting.
Right. That's it for your overanalysis?
That's it. That wraps it up for me. Not a lot on this episode.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot either, other than the things we said. This was clearly just a way to have a little love story, and
Right.
the sciencey part of it just didn't make any sense, and I just couldn't follow what the motivations were of these 30 inhabitants on this planet.
Well, like you said,
It was all weird.
if we'd learned that being in non-corporeal form was the greatest thing that happened to them, it would make a lot more sense that they really
Yeah.
wanted to keep it going.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go to women in the future, or are you scared?
I'm fascinated about what you would have to say.
Well, it's not good.
Why is that?
Once again, nobody does anything to protect the women that they work with, and everybody gets away with everything. I mean, what else is there to say? Did anybody get punished? Nope. Anything change? Nope. They just pulled a little prank on Quark. Haha, isn't that funny? That didn't make me feel any better about what happened to her. It was not good.
Well, they potentially ruined Quark's business.
Did they? No. And will they ban this guy from the station? Will they do anything? No. He was essentially stalking her. And are they going to do anything about it? Nope. Haha. It's so cute. We just let it go.
That wasn't a crime in the 90s.
Yeah, apparently not. And then on the other story, anytime people fall in love in 5 minutes and then want to change their whole lives, I just kind of roll my eyes. I mean, I get that you only have 46 minutes to tell these stories, but I'll never believe that an intelligent person would be willing to dump their entire lives after just a few days with another person.
Not if you're sober.
Right.
Which is why it worked with Curzon.
Maybe. Well, I don't know. I mean, they didn't do a good job of showing what Dural really had to offer Dax.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even see the appeal, other than he was attracted to her, which isn't enough.
Well, I think they failed to play up the fact that he was their leading scientist.
They really did. I know they kind of hinted at it, but you didn't get any evidence of it.
Yeah.
Like, all the good ideas came from Dax.
Right.
Which is usually what happens. She does usually seem to be the smartest person in the room. But he could have contributed. There should have been something that she was seeing that she was getting from that relationship.
Yeah.
Not just the attraction or the attention. That I couldn't see what the appeal was.
Like it was the first time she's come across someone who's really is her intellectual equal.
That would have been great, but they did not show that at all.
It gave the hint that the ideas and the background of being able to save the planet came from her and Dural. But it really wasn't spelled out.
No, it wasn't.
You know, he'd done all this research, and then Dax was able to build on that and figure out what was going on with the use of the probe. That's what I took from it. But I think a lot of that's implied.
Yeah, I guess so.
But it's not spelled out, right?
No, they didn't do a good job of convincing me that Dax was getting anything out of this relationship.
Yeah.
For giving up her entire life for that. I didn't get it. At the same time, I understand that Dax doesn't really have that much that she's giving up in her current situation. But still, it is your normal way of life.
But do you think some of the appeal to Dax was not necessarily him? It was also the appeal of being in this non-corporeal state. After 8 lifetimes, maybe that was as much appealing as this guy?
Yes. And she even said that, right? That she was looking forward to that. But again, we didn't really get why. What was she going to get from it? Like, were they somehow joined like the Great Link?
Oh.
That they could all share knowledge with each other. You know, what was she going to get from it? Again, it just made no sense to me why she would give everything up for something that didn't seem to have any appeal or any value.
She was getting a house by a lake.
Yeah. I was also wondering if that Trill Symbiont Commission or whatever they were called, if they would have had something to say about putting the symbiont at this risk, you know, of it transferring into pure consciousness and then back, because they're so protective of the symbionts.
That's a good overanalysis point.
Oh, thank you so much. I saved it for my Women in the Future section.
That's a really great take, because what would happen to the symbiont when they transform into this other form and then come back? It could die.
Exactly.
Maybe it's very stressful.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. It just like always, we don't think about the risks of things. And so we didn't think about the risk to the symbiont, but I bet that Symbiont Commission would have, and that tall doctor from the planet Trill.
Yeah, they probably would have freaked out. You're right.
Is that the name of the planet, the Trill homeworld? Was it called Trill?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Well, they call it the Trill homeworld.
Yeah. Well, that tall doctor woman, she would not have approved.
Yeah, she probably would have freaked out.
At the same time, if there had been something really positive about that state, then they could have said, ooh, think of what we can learn. So maybe it would be good, but
if you'd expanded upon the story.
Yeah, but we didn't. Okay, well, let's move to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Oh, this story is a 120% neutral. I don't think you could have a more neutral story if you tried. This is kind of like, you know how you described it, the okayest episode?
Whispers?
Yeah. This falls under Whispers for it's the okayest episode. This felt like it was a pure TNG plot. Again, that got recycled.
Yeah.
It would have been Geordi and a woman scientist from this world. You could have done that and you wouldn't have skipped a beat.
Well, I would agree with you if it hadn't been for the B story.
Ah.
I agree the Dax story was meh, neutral. But I was truly disgusted by the B story. I mean, truly disgusted. I didn't like how Kira used Odo at the beginning without any explanation. Like I said, it's a tried and true method, which women often need to do to protect themselves, and I fully support it. But you don't just play with someone's emotions when they are as emotional as Odo. At least explain it to him. I was disappointed that there was no explanation. Or, hey, I might have to do this again. This is kind of the kind of thing that women have to do because, of course, people who wrote this or lived it didn't have any idea about that. But the rest of that story was so salacious and so demeaning and awful and had zero consequences that this is a thumbs way down for me.
Yeah.
It's too terrible to be neutral.
Wow. 2 thumbs down.
All the thumbs down.
So when we do the end of season ratings, does this get 2 thumbs down from you?
Could. I'm not sure right now without comparing it to the other episode that I so strongly dislike this season. Not sure which one is worse, but I'm pretty sure it's this one.
This one was a little creepier.
So that was fun. I find it so frustrating that we have these really good things, these good episodes.
Yeah.
And then we just fall off a cliff and we have these terrible episodes. And it's just really hard to be motivated to move to the next one.
TNG runoff.
Gosh, we started this season so great. And then we have clunked along with a couple of nasty ones.
Yeah, we had a couple of bad clunkers.
Okay, I think
We've beaten up on this episode enough for 1 week.
I think so. That wraps up season 3, episode 8. Come back next week for episode 9, which will hopefully be better, because if it's worse, we're in deep trouble.
It is actually quite a good episode.
Oh, good.
It's one of those episodes that I could do my analysis on without rewatching it.
Really? That big?
Yeah.
Although you said you remembered this one. Could you have done your analysis on this without watching it?
On the Dax side of the story, yes, because I remember all that.
Oh, interesting.
Especially the jokes about the body markings. I thought that was actually funny.
Oh, I see. Yeah. All right. Okay. Are we done? You don't seem to want me to finish, and you keep interrupting me, so I'm just making sure you don't have anything else to say.
I'm good at interrupting.
Okay.
I think I'm finally done.
If you
I might even stop speaking.
Oh my God. Are you done? Seriously? Can I go? Should I just hang up the Zoom call? If you'd like to tell us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there on individual episodes, and you can also listen to all of the other awesome podcasts in our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it for me.